Here we are with Overwatch This. I'm Jeff from the Overwatch team.
Hello people of YouTube, Rich from PCGamesN here, and I'm joined once again by Matt.
Hi.
And that means we're talking Overwatch. It's episode 39, can you believe it, of Overwatch This, our weekly look at happenings in Blizzard's big shooter. And today we're talking about Doomfist, because what else would we be talking about? Released onto the PCR last week. Walk us through his kit, Matt.
Right, so now he's finally here. Obviously we'd all got ideas on what he could have been before. There was a leak that happened a while back that seemed to sort of like be fairly spot on with what it was. So he is predominantly a melee character. He obviously comes with the Doomfist, which is what most of his abilities are cause around. But he's an attacker with 250 health, so he's not a tank, which is, I guess, a surprise.
We were all expecting that, but he is probably the tankiest of the attack.
Yeah, he's got
heroes.
the upper end of kind of like the health pools for what an attack hero we'd expect to have. Actually not on the Doomfist, let's focus on the other fist for the moment. He's got, that's called the hand cannon,
right,
which has got, in each of the knuckles there's a shotgun, and that's a very, very short range. I think there's kind of like a spread of maybe 5 pellets that come out of that. Very, very short range, but they do reload quite quickly.
Right.
And they're actually on an auto reload, so you don't have to spam sort of like R to get new bullets. They will sort of like regen into the fist over time.
Like Tracer's charges.
Yeah, yeah. But the key thing that you're actually after is in the Doomfist, of which you've got Rocket Punch, which is if you hold down right click, you wind it up, there's like a little bar in front of you that'll stretch out.
Right.
Release, Doomfist propels himself forwards. It's a bit like a Reinhardt charge, I guess. If you slam people into the wall with it, you pretty much, if they're not a tank, you're going to get an instant kill on it.
Yeah, I think I saw the damage breakdown on this. It's 150 for a fully charged initial hit, and then a potential bonus damage when they hit the wall of another 100.
Yeah, and it's wonderful when you hit them. If you get them into the wall, there's this great sort of anime. I can remember hitting a Lucio, and just kind of like the pancake effect as he hit the wall is excellent. Really, really fun.
But that's crazy strong, right? I mean, we'll talk about this in a sec, but like it's a very short cooldown, like 4 or 5 seconds, and a potential 250 damage.
It's crackers, it's mad. It's what you'd expect from a guy called Doomfist, right?
Right.
Leading out of that is uppercut, which is if you don't want to go forward, you want to go up, you can just slam him in the chin. And it's essentially a Shoryuken from Street Fighter, right?
Yeah.
It's just a smack into the air. Must be great if you've got someone that can then follow him with an attack, so, you know, so like a Pharah that can swoop in and just knock a rocket into whoever's floating up in the sky. From there you've got Seismic Slam, which is kind of like a leap forward. It's kind of like his Hulk smash, I guess.
Right.
As he slams the ground, it creates kind of like the Reinhardt sort of like cracked earth effect. What it actually does is it pulls enemies in close for you so that you can sort of lamp on them from there.
That's cool.
Then his, ultimate attack, his Meteor Strike, which is essentially he flies up and then does the superhero landing and causes like an AoE.
He's off the map for a minute while you target.
Yeah, it's kind of, it reminds me a bit of, when you use Riptire for Junkrat, it kind of goes into that sort of view. And it's really kind of generous.
The difference being you can actually kill Junkrat while he's
there. Yeah, exactly. Whereas you can't with Doomfist, he actually goes off the map. It's quite generous in the amount of time it gives you. I've played kind of other games that have a similar sort of thing. If you've been playing the Lawbreakers beta, there's a character in there that has a kind of death from above thing, but you literally get a second. With Doomfist, you've got a good handful of seconds to decide where you're going to land. Cool. So you can really sort of like lay down the tactical sort of choice, wait for people to gather before you drop, because the AoE is quite generous on it as well.
The AoE itself is quite large, but I think that there's 2 zones of the AoE, isn't there? And the inner one does much more damage.
Much more, yeah. And he also has a passive, which is arguably one of the most interesting things he's got.
Yeah, this is what makes him slightly tankier than the other.
Exactly, yeah. So you can actually kind of essentially get up to 400 HP with him, because you can, as you deal damage with Doomfist, he'll generate a shield, and that obviously gives you over the 250 that he normally has, which essentially suggests that Doomfist is a guy that you need to be in the fray. You need to literally be wailing on people all the time in order to generate that shield to make him more viable as a character.
Yeah, it's key to your sustain, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's a fascinating kit, really, really complicated and intricate and interestingly designed. Does it make him a good hero?
Right, so that's kind of the big question. I think it's something that has been like, you check out any forum, you go to, you know, the PCGamesN kitchen and listen to us talking about him in there.
Yeah.
Everyone's got a different idea. Like Ben, who obviously normally does Overwatch This, he hates him.
He was not impressed, was he?
Absolutely hates him, thinks he's a terrible thing.
I think he's great.
Yeah, so...
And I think he's potentially really powerful as well.
I haven't quite made up my mind. I sort of like share this bouncing sort of thing with Kieran, our cameraman and producer.
Right.
Half the time I think he's great and half the time I hate him, and I think it's probably just because when I play him, I'm not used to playing anybody like this before. He's an entirely different character. I've never known an Overwatch character to, you know, when Anna turned up, she's a sniper, but she can heal, and that's a really cool sort of like change on it. It's taking the skills of a healer, but you know, manifesting them with the abilities that you need to be a sniper. So it's Widowmaker meets Mercy to a degree. Doomfist isn't like that. He doesn't take any of the like previous abilities that we know. You can't play him like any other hero. He is based on, so the way that I describe it is that most heroes in Overwatch, you rely on their weapon, right? Like if you're playing Soldier, you're running around, you're shooting people, but then you're backing yourself up with the ability to fire helix rockets, with the ability to throw down your biotics and stuff like that. Doomfist is about using your abilities first, and the gun is something that you use on the off chance that you're there and it can be used. So essentially you have to combo him. He works like a Street Fighter character. You have to be in close because the shotgun doesn't work at range, and even when you are in close it's not that great. What you want to do is get in there with the rocket punch, chain that into an uppercut, and then use essentially then as they're coming down, you pull them back in with your slam, and then you know, hopefully by then you've got something that's recharged, or you just, you know, perhaps fire off a few rounds of the shotgun, use a standard melee attack. But it's about constantly rolling those together.
And this is why all of his abilities are on such short cooldowns.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
We have already seen his first nerf, haven't we? Like
we have, yeah.
So the rocket punch range, we were talking about how strong the rocket punch was earlier. Its range has been brought in from 30 until just over 20 meters.
Yeah.
And like that made perfect sense to me as his first nerf, because you know you can't reduce its cooldown because rocket punch is key to his mobility. Like his base movement speed is quite slow. You need things like rocket punch and the uppercut for him to, you know, traverse the map at all. So removing the cooldown was not, you know, that was never going to happen. But the range makes a lot more sense.
For sure. And what this makes me think about is kind of like when people say, "Is Doomfist a good hero?" I think a lot of people that are around kind of like normal ability scale on Overwatch, you know, so like if they're in competitive, I imagine most people are around sort of like the silver gold sort of area. And most people are playing quick play. I think they're going to find him very, very difficult to get on with because you've just not had any prior experience in Overwatch to get you used to this sort of character. I think what we will see very, very quickly, and I think we already are starting to see, is that the pro players are going to have a field day with him, because you can create all sorts of weird combinations of the way that you fix his sort of like combo streaks together. And once they've nailed that, and I think when people start watching streams and watching pro tournaments where he's used phenomenally effectively, I think then we'll see a bit more of an uptake with him.
There are some absolutely inspirational you know, Twitch streams and highlight reels going up. People like Seagull want to watch out for him particularly. He's doing great stuff with Doomfist already.
But it's that whole thing of kind of like the way how you look at various different ways that people put together their team and stuff like that. You see that appear in streams and pro stuff like that, and then they do make their way over into quick play and into competitive. And what I think what we'll do is we'll see the initial uptake of Doomfist because everyone wants to play him, and people will find him very, very difficult. If you remember, with Sombra's quite a difficult character to play as, right? And when Sombra first came out, everyone wanted to play Sombra, and very, very quickly she died off. And only now you're starting to see her sort of like pick back up, and I think you will see that with Doomfist. What I do think is we'll actually see an increase in people playing Sombra. She's brilliant to play against a Doomfist, because Doomfist is based entirely on his abilities.
Yeah, and Sombra's got the hack.
Yeah, right, and he can't hit a Sombra that's coming at distance because his shotgun's just not powerful enough. You hack him, he's completely invulnerable, and you've got so many bullets in a Sombra SMG that you can just waste him. I had so much fun on the PTR playing essentially going up against 6 Doomfists that were coming on the other team because they've taken sort of like the restriction pick off, and just hacking them all and just absolutely melting them as Sombra. So much fun. But yeah, the moment those Doomfist characters figure out how to beat a Sombra, that's when things get interesting, because it means he's easy foil. Like, it's a bit like people now who play Bastion understand how to defeat a Genji, right? You just don't click when he's doing his deflect.
Yeah, it's not actually hard.
When people figure out what the easy foil for a Sombra is, that's when things will get really interesting with Doomfist, because you won't have that easy foil.
So let's talk about that, and let's talk about the meta and how you know, Doomfist might fit in it, and because Jeff on the forums recently, he had a big, really lengthy, detailed post about balance and perception of balance and how the meta shifts and how the meta ought to shift. So walk us through that and what he said.
Yeah, it's really fascinating actually, and I agree with a lot of things that he says, and that might just bring us over as the Kaplan fan club and stuff like that, because I know what he said is probably quite controversial for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think he speaks a lot of sense. And that's the idea that the actual perception of balance is way more important than actual balance. But also he believes the game is balanced anyway, so it doesn't matter.
Right.
And his point about balances is obviously there are certain characters that are better and certain characters that are worse. There are characters he's not actually happy with, but he doesn't think there's anything that breaks the game at current, and that is what his kind of criteria for balance is, basically.
Yeah.
And I think that's very important. Like, he realizes that Mercy's Resurrect, for example, is quite a very powerful ability, and maybe there's something they need to look at. Maybe they need to brainstorm the way that Mercy works and change them. Roadhog, for example, is another character that they recently did a change. You know, his hook shot doesn't work as well. It's not this one-shot kill anymore, but Kaplan's still not happy with it. I mean, Goodman actually even put on the forums earlier, I think it was yesterday, that they're looking at changing Roadhog's defenses to kind of like counterbalance the way they've changed his offenses. But that's just like, that's example of how Kaplan feels about the game, is that there are characters that are not in the position he wants them to be yet. Yeah. That doesn't mean that the game is completely broken, right?
Yeah, it's all about like, you know, you balance a character if the character itself is underbalanced, but not because of the way that players feel about the meta. So if, you know, Mercy is overpicked because she's too powerful, that's one thing. But if you know, a character isn't picked enough for other reasons, then, you know, it's nothing that he feels like. So his example on this was Torb and Symmetra.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, they've got amazing kind of win rates, right?
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean they need to be nerfed, because they're not picked all that much, and that doesn't mean that the game is breaking because you've got two great characters. You know, and also his point was like, we want people to play the characters they're good at, right? And just because Genji sort of like turns up and always ruins your day because people are good at him doesn't mean that we should nerf a Genji just because people are good at him and want to play him. And it all kind of comes down to like the discussion of meta and balance and stuff like that. At the moment, the hot topic is dive, right? That's what everybody kind of refers to. And dive has been going on for a little while now. And if you're not familiar with dive, the idea is kind of like you attack very key targets, traditionally on the back line. Like if you want to get rid of that healer, you send a dive character into someone like a Winston that can jump in, plus very quick characters. You've always got a Lucio with you to initiate that speed burst so you can get in on the attack quick. You'll have a Zen with you to disable kind of that target so they've got the Orb of Discord on them. It's all about kind of that very quick attack on key targets and stuff like that. And kind of Kaplan's like, you all sort of talk about how much you hate dive, but it's this perception, so people are constantly looking at the pro scene, right? And that's where dive is predominantly, you know, it's the pro players that invented dive, they came up with it. And it is kind of trickling down. You will play other games where people, you know, are quite clearly trying to put a composition together that is for dive. But the majority of people, right, like if you're watching this, the chances are that you're like me, you play quick play all the time. And actually, when you look at the statistics for quick play, very few people are playing dive. Kind of the top picks in quick play are Genji, 76, Hanzo, McCree, Mercy, and Junkrat, of which barely any of those fit into the dive meta. At all. And even when you look at competitive, where people, you know, are more concerned about what team compositions they use, it's Mercy, 76, Diva, Lucio, Ana, and Genji. Those are the top picks. Great characters, you know, amazing. You can put together great compositions with that, but they're not the dive-focused characters that the pro players are using. So people are constantly complaining that the meta's just not shifting. We've had dive for so long. But actually the majority of players aren't experiencing dive at all. And that's Kaplan's point, is like your perception of how the meta and how the balance is working isn't actually the same. As long as, I guess, he can shift people's perception to feel that everything's right, then that's kind of part of his balance issue solved.
I guess it's just the difference between, like, you know, an evolving meta that responds to considered changes to the characters that, as we say, are sort of led by whether or not the characters themselves are balanced, and, you know, knee-jerk reactions to you know, the perception, as you say, that the meta's been stale for a little while. Yeah, you're taking all of this together. Jeff Goodman, you said, commented on the forums that they're looking at changing Roadhog's hook combo.
Yeah. So it's just a case of that combo. He's one of these characters, right, that is perceived to be broken at the moment because they nerfed his hook combo, and it's just this idea that they want to keep that the way that they nerfed it in place, because it was deemed that he was just too powerful, right? He was getting what some people would consider cheap kills by doing the hook thing. Yeah. Whether you agree with that or not,
it's also funny that they say they want to resist one-shot combos and then they bring in Doomfist.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
This 5-second cooldown, which can potentially one-shot kill a character. But I guess that's slightly different because the way, you know, Roadhog's hook worked in a different way.
Yeah, but the idea is basically Jeff Goodman wants to look at Roadhog's defenses to make him perhaps a little bit more sustainable out there on the field. He's already really sustainable as it is, but if you can do something that means that he can stay in the fight a bit longer, if he can deal more damage in other ways that his hook, because he's just alive for longer, he's got pretty good DPS anyway for a tank. That'll be kind of the change that they make to him. And then sort of like, you know, whether he then re-emerges in the meta, the whole point is kind of like you make small kind of tweaks to characters to make sure that they're not broken and they're fine. And eventually the players will find a new meta. Like Dive didn't come about because of any massive kind of changes to different characters.
No, it's like there's a tweak to Winston.
Yeah, but basically it was a case of pro players realised that there was this really good tactic that they could put together, right? And that's what Kaplan wants to see happen. He's like, I'd rather not force massive changes on characters just to change the meta, just so people are happy that there's like this monthly change going on in Overwatch. He doesn't want to implement the MOBA kind of way of forcing changes, which is the drafting pick phase.
The pick and ban thing.
Yeah, he doesn't want you to have to ban characters for you to be forced into playing others. As fun as that is in kind of like the elimination modes, those modes are there if you want to play that kind of game mode, but he doesn't want it to be part of the overall Overwatch scene. What he wants is for people to pick their own meta, basically, for it to evolve as people figure out new tactics.
And it will happen, and it sounds like, you know, Mercy and Roadhog are the next ones that they're going to take a look at because they recognise that they are unbalanced as characters.
Yeah.
Anyway, that about does it, I think, this week.
That wraps it up.
Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for tuning in. We'll be back again next week as always. And until then, like, share, subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.